here in Michigan for a late season doe hunt. Mid-December. I'm going to try out some new ammunition, Federal Terminal Ascent, 200 grain and 300 Win Mag. This is a bonded bullet. I've been using the ELDXs. You've seen a few videos that I've done on those. A buddy of mine and I are getting ready to go into the Tex Creek area in Idaho next year after bears. And if you get on the eastern side of that unit, you're kind of getting on the edge of grizzly territory. So one, I want a bullet that's going to perform well if I have an encounter with a grizzly. And the other thing is, I had a couple of guys that shot some elk this year with the ELDX at longer range, and it just didn't perform as well as what I had hoped. Granted, the shots were not perfect. I think both of them were a little bit low. One broke the shoulder on a bull, the other one went right behind the shoulder, either just above the brisket or into the brisket, but it didn't fully penetrate. He was using a 300 PRC with a 212 grain. And so I'm looking for a bullet that's going to hold together better. I've used the AccuBond long range, which is technically a bonded bullet. And I've shot two, well, I should say, I've seen two elk shot with it. I've shot one was at 208 yards, and I had another hunter that shot one, sort of between 250 and 300. Neither bullet fully penetrated. So, not a big fan of those when it comes to big game. The design of the Terminal Ascent, having that thicker copper base at the bottom, I think is going to be a lot more beneficial. It's actually the bullet's mostly copper. It's not even majority lead. It's primarily a copper bullet, just with a little bit of lead in that center to help it open up better. But you've got the bottom half. I don't know if they've got the sticker might be over it, but if you look at the breakdown of the bullet, if you go online and check that out, you'll see the breakdown where it's got a pretty deep base that's just solid copper, and that's probably not going to expand a whole lot, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. Expansion at the front, no expansion at the bottom, just a big heavy shank to drive that bullet deep, break bone, go through hide, muscle, and all that. So we're going to see how this works out. I was with a lot of hunts. It started to rain, and as I don't have a deer blind out here, and I forgot my rain gear, I'm kind of out of luck. So I decided to retreat the 50 yards back to my pickup. I got a bean field that I'm looking over, so I'm not real worried about it. I just talked to the farmer. He said the deer don't really come out until just before dark, which is about another hour. So not a whole lot of point in sitting out and getting wet. I can just sit in here and stay comfortable. And then when they come out and go and make a stalk, and I think the farthest point from where I'm at is maybe 400 yards. I know from where I was sitting, 350 was the farthest I could hit with my rangefinder. So we'll see. Hopefully I get something. Test these bullets out. Oh, the rain stopped and we're back out here. About a half hour, maybe 45 minutes until dark, so I'm hoping something shows up soon. Well, there's a couple of them, but they're in the wrong field. All right, we got one coming out. Oh, there's another one. Oh, that's a nice buck. Was. Well, I was able to get two shots off. One deer is definitely down, and I'm pretty sure, judging on the sound that I got from the impact, that the other deer is down as well. I will say one thing, those Terminal Ascents, when they hit, man, they thump. And I don't know if it's just the angle that I was shooting at these deer or not, but we're going to take the truck over They were about 375 to 390 yards, give or take. So we're gonna go check these things out. All right, so this right here is where the went in at, right in the neck, which explains why the deer dropped. And as yet, I have yet to find an exit. So with no exit on that deer, he was closer probably to that 380, 390 mark. The back edge of this field was right at, I think, about 390, wasn't quite 400, but we're gonna try and dig that bullet out and see what we get. All right, so we've got massive trauma in the lungs on this guy. You can see right up here where the bullet just went in and shredded everything all the way around the back. Now the other one, it looks a little bit more normal there, but that would be his right lung is just disintegrated. And so I'm guessing that even at that distance, that bullet is somewhere in here and didn't, I don't know if it came apart or what. Okay, so I think what happened is that bullet hit high, took out the spine because he dropped. This is a small buck, and as you can see right up here, it just took out the top of the ribs, and my guess is that bullet is lodged somewhere in that spine. And when I skin him, we'll find it. Well, I decided to hold off on the skinning project until we had daylight, so we can actually see what we're doing. And I've got the little buck pretty well skinned down. I found the entrance hole. Again, there's no exit, but I want to show you guys what I found, because this is one of the nastier wounds that I've ever seen on an animal. Here's our wound channel. This deer was about 380 yards, and the impact velocity was right around 2,300 feet per second, and the foot-pounds of energy was about 2325, maybe 2350. So right here, you got the entrance hole, and then just mass carnage through the entire front shoulder and halfway up the backbone. I'm guessing the bullet's somewhere up in here. So you're looking at probably 24 inches or maybe even a little more of penetration. I'm not sure. We'll find out when I get into that part of the processing. So after we got this thing broken down, discovered that the entire top of the front shoulder was completely blown apart. That's why there was all those fragments tearing up the lungs. And then it went right up the backbone all the way up into here. So this is just in front of the hindquarters, right behind the rib cage. And then as I was skinning it out, one thing I forgot to point out the first time is that right down here, we've got little metal chunks that are from the bullet. Oops, there we go. So there's a little bit of lead right there. There's another one right here. But they're not very big. So that means the majority of the bullet is still somewhere either in the animal or out. And my guess is that it's probably jammed up in some of these vertebrae. So I'm going to try and break this down even more and see if I can find it. There's still no bullet. But here's the hip joint. And this right here is the last pieces of bullet jacket that I can find. Now this has lead on it, so this is still from the nose. You're looking at 14 inches from the hindquarter joint. And this right up here is about where the last rib was. And one thing I want to note about that, it was still breaking bone that deep, going from the front shoulder all the way back. I think I counted 7 ribs that were busted, along with the top of the shoulder blade being completely blown off. So this is trucking through some, I'm not gonna say heavy bone, but a lot of distance in bone and dense muscle. It wasn't going through the guts or anything soft. this is going through the toughest part of this animal, and we're still getting 24 plus inches of penetration. Okay, so despite my best attempts, I have not been able to retrieve the bullet. I don't know if it's in the guts or if it's lodged up in the spine somewhere. We're gonna skin the doe down. She was shot in the spine over the top of the hindquarters lengthwise, going down the length of the body. So we're gonna dissect her and see what that looks like. All right, so I've moved on to the doe, getting her broken down. I'm just starting to skin it. Wow, talk about carnage. Okay, so she was facing straight on to me, or pretty close to straight on, unless she moved a little bit just as I hit the trigger. And I was trying to aim for the top of her shoulder, do a high shoulder shot, lengthwise down the body, and hopefully take out her spine and drop her, which kind of happened. I dropped her, but instead of hitting in the front shoulders, I hit in the hindquarters, and this is what we got. All right, so somewhere in here is where that bullet entered. As you can see, it just wreaked havoc. I don't know how much this is going to be salvageable. And then it seemed like it exited right here over top of the hind quarter and the tail. Now, hind quarter on this side looks pretty good, but this front side leaves something to be desired. Now, I don't know how much of that is just blood under the skin, and if the meat's going to be salvageable or not. But we're going to keep breaking down, see and find out. Upside is the front shoulders aren't touched, but we'll see how this all pans out. Obviously no bullet, but they're just a massive amount of trauma. She was about 365 yards, so again, impact velocity is right around that 2,300 foot mark, and energy's just a little bit above that, 2,350 or maybe even 2,400 foot-pounds. So yeah, this one's nasty. Finally found the bullet. This was lodged in the back strap. Found it this morning as I was processing things out. The only weight loss was just those pedals that I showed you. Everything else is still here. Pretty good mushroom, hitting it nearly 400 yards. Plenty of shank left, so that bullet's still holding together. It's still driving deep, and if I can get the accuracy issues worked out on this, then this will be my new go-to round, especially out west. I'll use up the remaining ELDXs that I have on deer and things like that. Maybe some closer range elk, but as far as long range, this Terminal Ascent's going to be the ticket. And dangerous game. That'll be the other thing. Moose, bears, and particularly moose are dangerous, but they are tough. So, real life, that's what it does. Okay, so I want to think about some of the takeaways on this. I know some people are like, oh, you don't need to use a 300 Win Mag on deer, and that is correct. You can do it with a much lighter round. If you look at the ballistics, particularly at the distance that these deer were shot, it's very similar to a 308 at, say, 100 yards as far as your impact velocity, as well as most likely your energy. They use a little bit lighter bullet, 175 grain versus 200, but your results are very likely going to be similar. So the penetration is good. That was the one major thing that I wanted to find out about, hence taking those longer body shots as opposed to broadsides. I was waiting for that just to see what those bolts would do in a live animal. The one thing that I will say about the ammo itself, it's factory ammunition that I'm using, not hand loads. They're not as accurate as I have found with some other loads, particularly the ELDX and the AccuBond long range. And I don't know if that's me, the gun, the ammo, combination of all three. There's a possibility I was maybe pulling the trigger a little bit. At 400 yards, my group, probably my best group was 6 to 7 inches. So, about like that, you know, small pie plate, which is quite a bit bigger. Normally at 400 yards, I'm looking at a 3.5 to 4 inch group out of that rifle in similar conditions. And then this one, I don't know how true it is, but I was looking around on some of the online forums trying to find information about this round, and one gentleman mentioned that he had been running through some different ammo on a new rifle, see what it liked, and he was chronographing them, and he had a box of the same ammo that I had, the 300 Win Mag and 200 grain Terminal Ascent, and it was 110 feet per second faster than what the box advertised. And now this would match up to what I was running in my rifle, because it shot much flatter than what the ballistics calculator turned out, given the numbers that I fed into it, namely the BC that was on the box, the 0.608. I was using the 2810 velocity at a 200 yard zero, and I was consistently shooting anywhere from 4 to maybe even 8 or 10 inches high at 400 yards using this. And so I had to go through and kind of reevaluate how my drop chart was. And that's one thing that I will say, you need to double check your drop charts. If you're going to be shooting long range with this stuff or any bullet, go out there and practice. Don't sight in at 200, say, oh hey, I'm good. Go out there, test it, find out what it's doing, make sure. Because if I hadn't done that, and if I sight in at 100, 200 yards, like, oh, I'm good, and I'm going to go out, I'm going to test this thing at 400 yards, I would have most likely missed those deer, maybe wounded one, which I really don't want to do. Nobody does, and it would have been a really bad day. So confirm your data. And my wife kind of laughs at me when I say I'm collecting data on this stuff, but that's exactly what it is. I don't necessarily want to say scientific, but it's definitely practical. We need to know what our equipment does, whether it's going to be reliable or not. And I think it's a really reliable round. I'm definitely looking forward to taking it out next year after bear for sure, and possibly even elk if I don't fill my elk tag with my archery during the archery season with my bow. So I'll try to post some stuff up on that, and we'll see how it goes. Till next time, happy hunting.